Coming up on your favorite podcast, the football guys are back, Ryan and Zach. And we're here to talk about Desean Watson again, but we're also going to talk more about Dak. Dak Prescott got his big deal. We're going to talk about the implications for that and what the ripple effect is of that contract, talk about the salary cap. It's in place for the NFL. And then we'll break down the NFC South in our off-season preview podcast. We're going to have more conversations, big picks, big predictions. It could get out of hand. The last one did. We'll see if this one did as well. It's going to be a fun one tonight. So the NFL off-season pods continue. It's Zach, it's Ryan, it's me. It's next. Hey! It's the Tim Anderson Podcast. I'm Tim Anderson. It is football talking time as the weather continues to just green up here in Minnesota. So fantastic outside. So it's perfect time to talk football right here in the middle of March. Weather's looking good. Everything's looking good. Things are coming up roses. Ryan is excited because he's thinking he will be sitting in the stands for a Gopher Buckeye game this fall, which is, I know he's super excited about. And Zach is here as well. Not going to be in the stands for that game, but also very excited, but for completely different reasons. Good to have you both here. Good to see you.
Man, I've been looking forward to that Buckeyes game literally since they announced it was going to be on the schedule in like 2016.
When it comes to Buckeyes versus Gophers, I will be rooting for the asteroid to hit the stadium.
Zach was actually one of the only people still rooting for the pandemic at that point. He was like, you know what, my money's going to be on COVID between Buckeyes, Gophers. He couldn't hate Ryan Day or PJ Fleck more, so it works out okay.
I'm like Dwight in that episode of The Office. We could use a good plague.
I will not forget this slight. I'm just kidding.
Well, hey, the good news is, no matter what, somebody's going to leave for that Kansas job really soon. So, I mean,
might be PJ Fleck.
Nah, I think Peach is going to, there's a few jobs not worth taking in college football, and I think Kansas might be one of them. I mean,
yeah, when Les Miles can't fix you.
Well, there's a lot. Les Miles needs to fix himself. Like, he needs to spend some time.
How about some Glenn Mason action?
Oh, the return? The prodigal son comes home to bring him back to... Is Mark Mangino still available to do it? He was the last guy to win anything there.
Yeah. I think Mark Mangino's dead, isn't he?
No, he can't. He's not dead.
Cross him off then.
Yeah, First of all, don't besmirch Mark Mangino. He did a hell of a job there.
Yeah, he sure did. I'd just be very surprised if he's still alive.
He was, it was a tough look. Yes, still very much alive, 64 years old.
Wow.
Let's go, Mark Mangino. The job's back open. Let's come back and finish what you started. I got it. You know who I'd hire tomorrow? Aqib Talib. I'd be like, Aqib, come on, bud. Resurrect the program. Come on back.
It is way too early in the pod to be throwing hot takes like that, Tim. We are T-minus like 40 minutes from that kind of talk.
Yeah, you're right. We usually tend to get a little off the rails at the 1 hour mark. That's when the bold predictions come out here on this podcast. So that's the way we like to do it.
I'm beginning to think we need a new rule to say if you've got a hot take, you shoot. Like if you've got the big ridiculous take, you take it. You take the shot.
I think an hour into it is when the whiskey starts to set in for Ryan.
Ryan's not drinking.
Not tonight, but last time you were.
Ryan's taking in the meat sweats tonight. He's got the Von Hansen's sausage and cheese trail mix thing going right now, and I saw the little tub over there. It looked like you were housing that pretty good. I must say, that is delicious. Oh, my goodness. He will be.
I've got a lot of cheese left.
You'll be a full meat sweat here at about the hour mark, but that's okay. It's exciting.
It's worth it.
All right, guys, we should start with obviously the big headline here of the last couple of days. I want to hear both of your opinions on this because I think it has implications across the board in the league. Dak Prescott gets his contract. It's a pretty, I don't know if to call it if it's a big contract, right? It's not small, but at the same time, it's not Patrick Mahomes either. So I don't know. It's a huge first year, huge signing bonus. But it seems it might be one of those big dominoes that we were waiting to fall, it finally fell. So I'll start with you, Zach, and go to Ryan. Where do you stand on this contract? Do you like it? Do you hate it? I know you're usually not a guy who loves these kinds of deals for quarterbacks like Dak, but where do you go?
It seems like it's a pretty fair deal because there are people on both sides saying like, Dak stared him down and got what he wanted, and other people are saying that Jerry gave up the farm for him, and so it probably is a fair deal. I'm not a huge fan of it. The one thing I really don't like from the Cowboys' perspective is they did give up the ability to franchise him at the end. So this is it, right? Like if he wants to do it for 4 years and leave when he's 31, they have no way to stop it.
That's true. That's interesting. I didn't know that actually. That's kind of a new piece. I wasn't wrote on the full intent of the contracts. Ryan, I guess they had to pay him, right? Because I guess you couldn't go back status quo. You couldn't run it back what you had last year. But at the same time, Zach and I have harped on this before on the pod about paying guys that you don't think are top guy money. Is that something you're concerned about?
Well, I think the Dak Prescott issue is quite similar to the Kirk Cousins issue, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Where statistically he seems to kind of have it figured out a little bit. But then you look at the situational stats and maybe it's not quite as good. I think that this is a situation where as the cap grows, this deal's going to look better for Dallas. This year it doesn't look quite so good. It looks like a bigger contract than it's going to end up being for Dallas. But when we talk at this time next year and the cap is expanding again, post-pandemic as it's expected to do, like the NFLPA said it was expected to do that this year if the pandemic wouldn't have happened. Planning for that, this is going to look like a better deal for Dallas. I think this is a good deal to get done. You kind of know what you have with Dak a little bit. I think the bigger question for them is what are they going to do on defense and how is their offensive line going to hold up? But I mean, they're reworking contracts. They're trying to get guys, signed to extensions that they think are going to be around for a while, and reworking the deals of the guys that I don't think that they think are going to be around for a while. Dak is clearly a guy that they want to invest in. They're going to get him for kind of an average price over the next couple of years. I mean, the comparison that I would make really isn't to Patrick Mahomes as far as who you're looking at. I mean, this is a Kirk Cousins deal. It's like I said, in a couple of years, it's going to look a lot better than it does now.
I agree with what you said too. On the cap is going to explode. The TV deals are going to be huge the next time around. They're talking about the Fox, CBS, and NBC deals all doubling. Yeah. So that is going to mean big things for the cap. So I think if you can kick the can down the road on anything, right, it's a great time to do it.
Yep.
If it sucks for a year, this year, oh well. And that's where some of the stuff, even with the Packers, have been talking about, like, just extend guys, spread their money out, and deal with it later. Because what seems like a big deal now may not be such a bad deal in 2 years.
I guess.
Right.
Go ahead, Ryan.
Well, I was just going to say, you look at teams that tried to plan for this a little bit with if we're going to have a cap hit in a year where we expect the cap to explode. Everybody thought that 2021 was the year that the cap was going to explode. And then the pandemic hits in 2020, and suddenly you're saddled with contracts and a cap that actually goes down. You look at teams like Philadelphia and New Orleans who were planning on the cap exploding in a few years, and it just never materialized. And now they're in a really bad pinch where they have to slam shut any kind of window that they have for a championship, particularly in New Orleans' case. Philadelphia really didn't have much of a shot for another championship. But you look at that New Orleans team, and you look at how much they had, sunk into some guys that maybe weren't worth the money that they were paying, but it was team chemistry stuff. That's a team that they thought we can keep this together as the cap grows, as these new TV contracts come in these years, and it just didn't materialize. So now you have teams like Dallas that are figuring that out, but you have teams like New Orleans that are now they're kind of screwed, and they're going to lose a bunch of really talented guys potentially because of this cap reduction.
It's interesting to me that I think the Cousins thing is a fair one because we're looking at two guys who got paid who don't have a whole lot of like playoff equity, and we're at this place where I'm starting to just I'm not saying you have to be amazing, but I do think you're after 4 or 5 years in the league, I think your resume kind of is what it is. Like Dak has had the weapons. I don't want to hear it. that, like Dak hasn't had this or hasn't had that. He's had high-end offensive linemen. He's had a running back. He's had receivers. They've had defensive talent. And he hasn't won big games. Just hasn't gotten it done. Cousins in the last few years, we could argue he hasn't had an offensive line here, and that's fair. That's a very fair conversation to have. But he's got one playoff win in 4 years or 4 years. And I just think at some point you are what you are. And so that's what gives me pause on a Dak contract, because I'm looking at him and I'm just going, I think I've seen your best. I think I've seen the best you can be. Am I wrong? Have I seen Dak's best, do you think, Zach? Or Ryan, do you think so or not? I don't know. Zach, what do you think?
It's a fair criticism. He has not gotten it done. I mean, right, his first year, they were the 1 seed. They had, the bye and Green Bay coming in, and they ended up losing that game. The issue now is, right, they're paying Zeke. They've got weapons around him. I don't know. I don't like paying quarterbacks big money that aren't elite, and I don't think he's elite.
Yeah, I kind of agree. And just like I don't think Cousins is elite, now that I've watched Cousins up close for 4 years, I like Cousins. He's good, but he's not great, right? He's not that guy. He's good.
Guys like that, you're what you're paying for is a guy who can hold you through, and you hope everything around them elevates the team enough to win a title. You're not paying them Patrick Mahomes money because they're not going to win you the title themselves, right? You're not paying them Aaron Rodgers money because they're not going to go win you the title themselves. They're largely not going to be in the conversation every year for NFL MVP. They're not going to be the kind of guys that you're talking about as Hall of Fame quarterbacks at the end of their career. These are guys who are serviceable. They're acceptable. At times they're above average or good. In certain seasons and in certain situations, they could even be great. But it's not going to be consistent enough to warrant that kind of money. So you look at those guys like Dak Prescott, like Kirk Cousins, like Ryan Tannehill, like Cam Newton, guys who aren't going to be consistently in that conversation, and you say, what's a reasonable cost for them? And I'm a guy who likes to subscribe to the theory of you work the cap in percentages. And the cap hit for a quarterback, for a decent quarterback, not a great one, but a decent quarterback that's going to win you games and not lose you a ton of games, is roughly where Cousins and now Dak Prescott are going to end up sitting when the deals are done. So I think that it's, your criticism is valid, but you're not paying them to be Pat Mahomes. You're paying them for what you're paying them, and you're paying them for the length of their contract, which takes into account the cap extensions.
So would that make sense then if you're a team like, well, Dallas won't now that they've paid him the money, and I don't think Minnesota will because they've invested so much into Cousins. But if you look at your guy and you say he's just good, he's not great, is there urgency to draft at least some competition, or at least kick the tires on 3rd and 4th round picks? See, I'm a believer you got to draft a QB every year, or at least every 2 years, somewhere in the draft to offer up a different viewpoint and to see what your guy's made of. Like some people have argued, the drafting of Jalen Hurts showed you something about the mental strength of Carson Wentz. Now, I am a Carson Wentz guy. I kind of like Wentz, but at the same time, I'm not sure he handled that very well. He didn't handle the challenge. He didn't handle the pressure very well of having that competition or having that guy over his shoulder. But I think maybe in doing that, you learned something about Carson Wentz. I just wonder if teams that are sitting there with these kind of middle-of-the-road guys or slightly above-average guys maybe need to be thinking about taking bigger swings in the draft or taking bigger swings in free agency somewhere else. I don't know. Zach, are you a proponent of if you don't have the guy, you should always be in pursuit of the guy, or is good enough for right now enough to kind of hold off on that?
I think it depends on what else you have on your team. I've expressed before, I do like the theory of drafting quarterbacks and investing in that position. If you think you've got enough other stuff around that guy, that you have a chance to win the whole thing, then go for it. But I think that if you are, if you think, well, we might get into the playoffs, but that's like our ceiling, then you definitely have to invest in quarterback.
I'm a big proponent of drafting a quarterback every year, even if it doesn't work out in the end. You have something there that's a project to work on, and if he pops, he pops. And more likely than not, they're going to fail. But if you are lucky enough to hit on one, that's a franchise-changing move, right? The risk is basically nothing, and the gain is potentially, a Super Bowl if you hit on a guy, multiple Super Bowls if you hit on the guy, right? You have to take that dice roll. It is literally zero risk to your franchise to take a second, third, or fourth round quarterback every single year.
We'll definitely have to keep an eye on this situation. Bottom line is this: if Dak comes back healthy, let's not forget he got injured pretty severely last year. Dak comes back healthy next year. Dallas a playoff team or not?
Yeah. Their division is wide open.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, there's quarterback questions at every other team in the division. So I think the real issue, if they're not a playoff team, you have to call into question then McCarthy.
Yeah.
Because you're not going to get rid of Dak, right? I mean, they just committed to Dak. So if they don't make the playoffs, I think you have some real questions there with McCarthy.
No, I totally agree with Zach on that. I have questions about McCarthy now, but I think that they're a team that can be ridiculous on offense. It's going to come down to how they perform on defense, I think. But I also wouldn't count out a step forward from a team like the Giants. And we know that Washington started to look okay last year. That division, with an offseason, with some new rookies, with some new blood, those are a couple of teams that could take some steps forward to challenge Dallas here. And if they go into the season writing off their competition in the division, I think that they're going to be in for a rude awakening come playoff time if they're not running away with the division, because there are two other teams in the division that can compete with them if they're not as talented as they think they can be.
All right, we'll keep an eye on that situation as we go, but that's a big domino that fell here, right? So speaking of all of these dominoes that have fallen, at least having Dak unsigned left Dallas as this leverage piece, as a potential dance partner for a trade or for something. That's one less domino, that's one less dance partner, and now the Desean Watson stuff becomes a little bit more, I think, dicey, like harder to do. Like he's going to have there's less leverage, I feel like, in making trades because there's just less resources, there's less options out there. So as we move back into this, I know, Ryan, you saw some stuff with David Culley today that made you convinced that we're looking at the second coming of Jim Tom Sula, or name your Ray Rhodes, name your 1 year and done coaches out there, the Les Steckles of the world, etc. Where's that situation at, in your opinion, and where are we going from there? Any updates?
Well, I think that if you look at just not just the language he was using today, because it's very clear that they understand they're going to need to trade Desean Watson. I know that in the media, the GM and the front office have said, no, we're not going to trade him. He's our quarterback. He's our guy. And, the head coach has said he's our guy. He's our guy. But when he starts using phrases like, we want somebody who wants to be here, that tells me that they know that it's over, it's done, and he would rather retire than play another down for the Houston Texans, and I don't blame him. But yeah, I think that this is a guy who is absolutely stepping into this job, who's going to be the fall guy for the rebuild. He's going to have maybe a year or two to suck. They'll go 1-15, 2-14, maybe 3-13 for a year or two. They'll let him go. They'll hire the next hotshot guy, and they'll have a team with some pieces that they can actually sell to somebody who's a decent coach. So, I mean, is it fair to Culley? No, probably not. But we see the NFL do this time and time again. A ton of teams have done this before, where you have the guy who's your rebuild coach, and then you bring in the real guy. I don't know.
It's interesting to keep an eye on. I was just talking about this with you, Zach, a little bit before we started recording, because we're just going to break down the NFC South here in just a few minutes. And one of the names that popped up a ton this offseason, well, there's a handful of names that popped up this offseason. Obviously Wentz, obviously Stafford, obviously Goff. Dak came up. We still talk about Russell Wilson. Ben Roethlisberger came up, but he has restructured his deal. He's back in Pittsburgh. And now we're looking back at a guy like Matt Ryan, who is still sitting there in Atlanta. And I asked you this, and we'll talk about this more when we break down the team, but just who's left? Like, who's left in the carousel? Like, who's got who needs to still make a move here, and is there, or can we expect 1 to 2 or 3 more big moves before we get to the draft or before we get to the start of off-season OTAs and stuff?
I think, we talked, like you said, we talked briefly about this. I can't see that Ryan is going to go anywhere, because I just don't think he's that big of an upgrade to anybody who's still looking.
No.
And I don't think they ever were intending on trading him until they saw what Stafford fetched. And then they were like, well, hey, if somebody wants to give us 2 first rounds, like, we'll trade our quarterback too. I think in the end, right, the Bears are looking and the 49ers are maybe looking. And I know, Tim, you think that the Patriots are in the market. I think the Patriots are going to draft one.
You might be right.
I can't see them trading for a quarterback.
And we can discuss this later, too. I was telling Tim today, I'm not convinced that they're ready to move on from Cam Newton. If they can get him some weapons, I think he can be a decent quarterback.
You're high.
Maybe not the guy he was, but I think that if you get him some weapons, you can stave off the need for a quarterback for at least a year. Maybe you draft a guy and sit him. But I don't know that they're going to be dead set on getting a guy they can start right away.
Ryan, I want to play a quick game with you here real quick. And Zach, you can chime in. I want to play former Panthers quarterback who has a better arm. I'm just going to name a former Panthers quarterback and Cam Newton, and you tell me who right now has a better arm. Not who had one in their prime. I want to know who has it right now. So let's begin. Better arm right now, former Carolina Panthers quarterback. Kerry Collins, Cam Newton. Go.
Pass.
All right, next one. Jake Delhomme, Cam Newton, better arm right now. Go.
Delhomme.
This one's for Zach. Chris Winkie, Cam Newton, better arm right now. Who's got it? Go.
I was waiting for the Chris Winkie reference. I don't know that you can pick Cam over anyone.
Cam could not complete a 6-yard pass last season in the second half of the year. Did you not watch the games?
There's no way. There's no way they start him this year.
They can't.
I think he gets another shot.
Ryan. No.
I think he gets another shot. And again, I'm not saying they're not going to draft a quarterback. I'm not. I think that they will. But I don't know that they're going to invest a super high draft pick in a quarterback because I don't think that they feel that they need it. Look, who was their number 1 receiver last year?
Yeah, it's a fair question. They didn't have a lot of weapons. I agree.
Really, though, who was the best receiver on that team?
Edelman.
He played 5 games.
Yeah,
I know. I'm just saying, your best guy played 5 games. Your offensive line fell apart halfway through the year. Your quarterback got COVID 3 games in. All I'm saying is there's a lot working against him here, and he's going to get a pass for some of it.
If they're not going to draft quarterback, they're going to there's a better chance that they start Stidham.
Oh God! Don't say that. Oh, that's terrible.
If they're not going to take a quarterback,
yeah,
Stidham I think is more likely than Cam. I think Fitzmagic is more likely than Cam.
I would rather have Fitzpatrick than have any of those guys.
That's fair.
Yeah. And that's what I'm saying. Like, if you're going to get somebody off the scrap heap, why not go for Fitzmagic?
Ryan, more explosive passing offense, Army or the New England Patriots last year with Cam Newton leading them?
Boy, that's a great question. Did you watch that Army-Navy game? They really broke it open. I think they threw it 4 times.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Did you watch that Rams-Patriots game late in the year last year, that Bills one, where they weren't...
They'll just run quarterback power 4 times inside the 5-yard line?
They couldn't pass it. They couldn't move the ball. Got to get a different guy. Got to change things up. I agree. They need receivers. There's no question about that. I completely agree. But Cam wasn't any good. I mean, he just wasn't good. But they're in the market. I mean, and that's where, I don't know. And again, people crap all over Matt Ryan. And I know you're not as high on him, Zach. I think Matt Ryan's better than Matt Stafford. Like, I'd rather have Matt Ryan than Matt Stafford. That's just me. I've seen Matt Stafford every year for 10 years, twice a year against the Vikings. I'd rather have Matt Ryan. I don't know.
I'd rather have Matt Ryan, too, I think. I'm not a Matt Ryan homer, but I do like Matt Ryan. I think he's a good quarterback. I don't think he's as good as he was, but he's a good quarterback. I mean, right now, other than Tom Brady, he might be the best quarterback in the NFC South.
Yeah. Well, the NFC South is probably the worst quarterback division in football.
Yeah, outside of Tom, who is, elite, legendary, amazing. It's a whole lot of nothing after that. It's a whole lot of nothing after that. I agree with you. It's pretty rough. All right.
It's extremely rough. Teddy Bridgewater, I think he had a chance to win like 5 games last year, and his passer rating in those situations was like 38.
I'm still not going to give up on Ted, but you're right. It wasn't good down the stretch. It was tough. I think he got banged up a lot. I don't know.
And again, to be fair, who's he throwing the ball to?
No, and we're kind of transitioning here into our NFC South.
We're moving into our NFC South. This is a brilliant transition. Nice job, everybody. Look at this radio stuff you guys are doing.
So my aspect is, like, if you look at the Saints, like, what are the Saints doing at quarterback?
Well, that's the $25,000 question, because Brees hasn't announced his retirement yet, and it all starts and stops right there, doesn't it?
I would think so.
Well, right. I mean, let's put it this way: if the Saints tell Drew, like, it's time to be done, like, he's not going to come back to not be the quarterback there.
Exactly.
Right. So if he's coming back, it's because they still want him to be there and he wants to be there. But right, they seem to be, like, committed to Taysom Hill over Jameis Winston.
Yep.
I don't think either of those are great answers.
Neither do I.
Maybe that's your New England quarterback too. Maybe Jameis goes up there.
I thought that last year. I thought Jameis would be their guy last year, and they settled with Cam. So
you don't think that he re-signs with New Orleans?
I don't know. Here's the deal. If New Orleans makes it clear to him that they're going to start Taysom Hill, then I think he's got to go take a shot somewhere else.
I agree. Especially when a place like Carolina is in the market for a new quarterback, or you got a place like New England where you could go and probably start. I mean, there are options out there.
I mean, not Buffalo, the Bears.
Yeah, the Bears. There's options out there. Let's start with New Orleans, Ryan, because I know you've been examining their salary cap situation. Even if they wanted to re-sign Jameis Winston, as a backup, they gave Teddy Bridgewater $4 or $5 million. I got to think if you're Jameis Winston, you need at least that, right? I mean, to be the backup there, and can they afford that?
Yeah, right now, after their slew of moves, right, they've made a ton of moves trying to free up cap space in the last week or so.
Yeah, they cut like 7 guys: Emmanuel Sanders, Thomas Morstead, and
Quan Alexander, Janoris Jenkins. The list goes on with them. They're still $25.5 million in the hole.
The cap going down 8% didn't help.
Yeah.
No.
If Drew Brees were to retire, right? If Drew Brees retires, they could potentially save around $12 million, but he's still owed a little bit of money, right? There's still a bonus there that he may be waiting for or something. We don't know, right? If they cut him, right? If they cut him in after June 1st, they'll save $1 million in the cap. That's all they get.
That's nothing.
And he still has $11.15 million on the cap. There's no good situation for the Saints with Drew Brees other than his retirement. It's the number they need him to retire. It's the biggest move that they have. The other thing is they're going to need to potentially trade some guys here. They're going to need to move some guys for some pieces. I think that they're moving into. I said this weeks ago that they're moving into a situation where I don't see anything other than a major rebuild coming their way. They're just in such an awful position. It's undoubtedly the worst in the NFL. There's just no good situation for them. But I mean, it's. I don't even know what to do. I mean, that's where we're at. I don't know what you do here. I don't know who you cut. I don't know who you move.
Zach, your thoughts here on New Orleans? I mean, I feel like they kind of shot they had a window, and they clearly put all their chips in to be in this window, and it didn't pan out. They lose to the Vikings. They lose to the Rams at home. Tom comes in and beats them this year. It just didn't work out, and now this is what happens at the end of these cycles, right?
Yeah, and I think the question is if they are full rebuild mode, like Ryan wants them to, like, do they do something with Kamara? Yeah. Do they do something with Michael Thomas? I mean, because there's still some weapons there, right? So I don't know that they're just like dead in the water, but they've got a lot of work to do.
It did seem like the mix got a little weird last year, right? Like Thomas got a little weird last year. I mean, I know he was a little banged up, but he was also chirping a lot on Twitter, and it just seemed like he was kind of unhappy, a little mercurial.
Right, didn't he get in a fight at practice and suspended for a week?
Yeah, there was just a lot of stuff kind of going on around the team, a lot of tumult. Like, just on the peripheral with guys like Thomas, and, you got Kamara, and you got some of the defensive guys with big attitudes. You wonder if the mix is a little weird right now, right? And that can happen, right, when the window's there and then the window closes, and you're still standing there without a ring at the end of the day. And, of course, you lose to Tom. I mean, that's got to be frustrating.
Yeah, I don't know what you do. Right? I'm looking at over the cap right now and just playing with numbers. Like I've June 1st cut Teron Armstead. He's I mean, it's not something I think they do, but it's going to give you a little bit of money back. You cut Ryan Ramczyk, you cut Marshawn Lattimore, and those are a few big name guys who don't really hurt your cap if you get rid of them, and they're still only $5 million under the cap.
Who do they then, knowing this situation, Ryan, like, what is their draft situation? Like, where do they draft, and what do you think their biggest position of need is going to be after all of this shuffling stops?
I think undoubtedly you're going to need to rebuild some pieces on the offensive line. The line really wasn't great last year to begin with. It was going to be a need. Excuse me, but you have some glaring holes there with some guys you're going to have to get rid of, and your defense is going to take a major hit, right? I think especially on the back end, you need a corner. You probably need a safety. It wouldn't hurt to have a linebacker that can step up for cheap on a rookie deal. Offensively, obviously, I think you need a quarterback. That's got to be team wide. That's probably got to be the biggest need is a quarterback. Because if it's me, I know you want Jameis Winston and you think your guy's in the house. I don't see how you bring Jameis Winston back. Frankly, I don't know if you can bring Taysom Hill back. I know you like him, but he's an older guy. He's going to be a lot of money for a guy. What is he really contributing for that amount of money? Can you do better with a rookie quarterback on a rookie deal? I think you can. So
the problem is they're not in a spot to draft a quarterback.
That's true, right? Well, I mean, where's their draft position, Ryan? Where do they draft?
They're 28th. They're right after Baltimore and right before Green Bay. It's tough sledding. It's a tough spot. But when I said that they really mortgaged themselves on the cap going up this year, this is the house getting foreclosed on. I mean, that's really what we're talking about here. There's just not a whole lot of wiggle room for them.
But I think that's okay, right? Like, they won the division how many years in a row?
Yeah.
They took their shots. They lost under some weird circumstances, right? Like, you got, like, the Minneapolis Miracle. You've got the pass interference non-call, right? I mean, like...
Yeah, 2 pass interference non-calls, offensive and defensive.
Right, I mean, but you know what I'm saying, right? Like, everything they did built to, right, these playoff games where they just didn't work out for them. But, I mean, in theory, right, like, their plan worked, right? They were right there. They were a top team. They just didn't come away with the Super Bowl at the end.
Right. And that's football, right? Sometimes that happens.
Yeah.
You build a really good team, you're good for a long time, and you just don't win a title.
Hey, Ryan, if Green Bay calls New Orleans and says, let's flip picks, I'll give you Jordan Love, you give us Taysom Hill, who says no?
Look, Green Bay, 100%. I don't know why anyone would trade for Taysom Hill, especially with a second-year quarterback who's learning at the foot of the master.
But he ain't going to play for 5 more years. Like, Jordan Love's not going to play.
Right. You still
want it.
You need to get more than flipping a pick and Taysom Hill.
Yeah, and that's moving back, right? They'd be moving back a pick. There's still not a quarterback there. Jordan Love, if he's not the real deal, you're in a bad situation. Honestly, I mean, if you're looking at the pick slate for New Orleans, you're probably better off trying to trade up, giving up a couple of extra picks to trade up and get one of those quarterbacks. But they're not going to fall out of the top 10, so you're going to be paying a king's ransom for an unknown at quarterback when you have a lot of other glaring needs that you need to fill.
And they don't know. They can't draft a guy if Brees is still there. If Brees is still on the roster on draft day and they have Jameis and they have Taysom Hill, they can't take a fourth.
The problem is you don't have Jameis. Jameis is an unrestricted free agent, and if Drew Brees is the quarterback, I'll bet money that he signs somewhere else.
Jameis does? Yeah, Jameis will probably sign somewhere else, but I'm saying, okay, then you still have Brees, you still have Taysom Hill. You're not just going to take another guy in that spot, right? Are you? I mean,
but at the same time,
what team has a legendary quarterback and would take quarterback in the first round? That's just asinine.
The difference is this, though.
Drink.
The difference
I
is,
just
though.
hammered the rest of my drink.
The difference is, though, on that one, Zach, is that your coach didn't come out and publicly say that the future quarterback's in the building. And Peyton has said that about
coaches say that stuff all the time.
I get that, but there really is no heir apparent to Aaron Rodgers in Green Bay. So the draft of Jordan Love makes some sense. There is an apparent heir apparent in New Orleans. I think they're ready to give the keys to Taysom Hill. Like at least I think that's what.
No, I think he wants Jameis. The problem is you don't have the cap space for Jameis. You might not have the cap space for Hill, and if Drew Brees comes back, you might not need to run out and get a quarterback this year.
Here's my thing. I think that they're in a spot like if Drew Brees retires, maybe they address all their other needs.
Yeah.
And just do whatever at quarterback for a year.
Yeah.
Yep.
Right? Fitzmagic. and then you regroup next year.
That's possible, yeah. That's possible.
I think that's more likely.
Yeah, and I don't know that that's necessarily what they do. And I don't know if you want to be in the market of, giving away years of Alvin Kamara. But it just seems to me like it might be maybe they go back and get Teddy.
That's interesting.
Teddy's open. I mean, if Teddy's available because of other things there, I mean, he went 5-0.
It's true.
Right?
Yeah, he did.
So here's just, if we're looking at the draft, here's where this could benefit the Saints a little bit. Dream scenario if you're New Orleans, if you will. If you're looking at quarterback picks, I'm looking, obviously, 1 and 2. They're going to be quarterbacks. It's Trevor Lawrence, and then take your pick of the next guy, right? I have Zach Wilson. I think he's going to be the next guy after Trevor Lawrence.
Over Justin Fields?
Yeah.
Why?
I think Zach Wilson's just a better quarterback than Justin Fields. I think that Justin Fields is going to be the third one taken, and then whoever ends up taking the next quarterback is going to be taking Trey Lance out of NDSU. I think Trey Lance could be a really good quarterback in the right situation, but that's my fourth guy. The other teams that I think are looking at taking a quarterback are potentially New England, but I don't know if they take a quarterback in the first round.
Don't make me play who has a stronger Carolina quarterback arm. Don't make me do it again.
Where they're sitting in the draft, there's not really a quarterback that makes sense to take at 15.
Sure.
Other than that, Washington needs a quarterback at 19. You could argue Chicago needs a quarterback at 20. And Indianapolis is listed as needing a quarterback. They don't need one at 21. They have Carson Wentz. Right? So that helps. There's no quarterback really to take at 19. I think Washington probably goes receiver there.
Okay.
I think that Chicago's going to be more likely to upgrade their offensive line. I don't think they go quarterback there. So then the only other team that you really need to worry about that needs a quarterback ahead of you if you're New Orleans is Pittsburgh. And you know Ben Roethlisberger's coming back for another year, so they may kick the can down the road and not take a quarterback, meaning at 28, Mac Jones could be sitting there from the University of Alabama, and you're saying, well, hot damn, this guy plays just like Drew Brees does, and he's a perfect fit for our system. Let's take him.
That'd be interesting. Mac Jones would be kind of interesting, although there's a great history of Alabama quarterbacks in the NFL. It's gone really well.
Yeah, it really has.
So I could see that panning out nicely. I could see that really.
Let me get this straight. I think that Mac Jones is vastly overrated in this draft. Small sample size. He's an okay quarterback. Everything was perfect for him at Alabama. I don't think that translates well in the NFL. He doesn't have the best arm, but neither did Drew Brees. So, it is what it is.
Yeah, better New Orleans Saints throwing arm, Archie Manning right now or Drew Brees right now? This is my new favorite game we're going to play.
I'm going to take Archie Manning on that one.
Zach, bottom line, Drew Brees doesn't come back, does he?
I don't think so, but I also don't know why he hasn't said that yet.
That seems weird to me that he hasn't said it. That's the only thing that feels a little Brett Favre-ian right now. Feels a little like he's gonna get the eye or the itch around June, and I think he wants the freedom to be able to say he's got the itch in June. I don't know. It just doesn't feel right that he hasn't retired yet, and that makes me wonder if he's not back in the fold next year. I'm a little concerned about that. All right. Let's switch over. We'll get to the defending champs last. I want to do that last. But let's talk, since we just talked about Teddy, let's talk Carolina real quick. They had their first year with Matt Rule. They had McCaffrey hurt most of the year. They got off to a half-decent start. Like, Teddy got them going there for a little while, and then it just faded down the stretch. I know Teddy missed some time. He got hurt. They were playing P.J. Walker or whatever his name was, and that didn't go great. That game against Green Bay on that Saturday night was next to dreadful, which I think was the low point of them this season. I feel like they got a lot of holes. I guess, what do we make of that team? And are they going to get into the Desean Watson sweepstakes, or are they going to start chasing a guy here in the next few weeks? They're the team that I'm kind of waiting on.
What amazes me is how they've said over and over, like Rules come out and been like, we want a top quarterback. We want one of these guys. And what are they going to do if they don't end up with Watson? Because you've just announced all of that, and can you bring Teddy back after that?
Yeah, you've pretty heavily implied that you don't believe Teddy Bridgewater is a top quarterback.
Right, and so I don't know what the move is for them then. I've heard they're willing to give up McCaffrey in a deal for a quarterback.
Well, I feel like they'd have to. I feel like that's a starting point. If I'm Houston, I need a marketable star back.
Yeah, I just don't know. I mean, how much more is McCaffrey going to give you? I mean, he's been banged up a few times. He's getting up there in running back years. Yeah, he's same age as Derrick Henry, ready to fall down here in the next year or two. I think there's no doubt. But how can you? So I don't know that you can build around him. I agree. I don't know if you can, but yeah, you're right. I mean, Matt Rule is kind of
stuck his flag in the ground, but at some point you got to do something about that, right, Ryan?
Yeah, no doubt. I think if you're Carolina, would it be really nice to have Desean Watson? Yeah, that's a piece you really want to have. But arguably, I mean, you've got to put more than Christian McCaffrey and DJ Moore out on that field. You have to have more than that. Your offensive line needs to improve. Your defensive line really needs to improve. You've got nothing at linebacker, and you haven't since Luke Kuechly retired. You've really got nothing on the back end of your defense. Your safeties haven't played great. You've got Jeremy Chin, who's a good rookie, but it remains to be seen whether or not he can carry that year to year. I think bottom line, there's so much unproven about that roster that going all in on a quarterback and mortgaging your future on that quarterback, I know he's a great quarterback, and I really like him.
I don't think he is.
It feels like a move that you make that could ruin your franchise because the rest of the pieces aren't there.
See, that's the thing. It's not worth it for me to trade Watson because I feel like they're 7-9 with him, 6-10 without him.
I think it's a little bit better than that. I think that he gets you to the playoffs. Only because I think that the NFC the NFC can be up and down, especially in that middle. It's really top heavy.
I feel like I can name 8 teams right now better than Carolina, even with Desean Watson.
See, I don't think that that's true. I think that they're about if you put Desean Watson on that team, I think that they're on the same level as Minnesota, and Minnesota's a bubble playoff team. I think that they're on the same level as an Arizona, who's a bubble playoff team. So I just think that they can beat those teams. They can compete with those teams if you give them an excellent quarterback play. Because they were in the games that they lost this year. They were in those games, but they didn't have the quarterback play to get them over the hump.
Can we book a friendly wager right now? If Desean Watson is the quarterback at Carolina this year, I'll take them to miss the playoffs. Ryan, you get them to make the playoffs for a cold beverage.
Yeah, I'll take that bet.
All right, write that down.
Write that down. I'm going to write that down here. Let me write that down. This is a new game we're going to play here called Podcast Wagers. I think we're going to have a couple of running bets going here. So let's see. We got a bet. We got one drink. Desean Watson, Carolina.
Well, you guys are both teachers, and I live in a one-bedroom apartment. We're not going to be betting with real money here, so I'm just kidding.
Hey, how much do you think we get paid here, Junior? I mean, I got to tell you, it's not Listen, we qualify for the stimulus. Let's just say that we ain't making that good of cash around here.
Well, actually, I told Caitlin that I did not qualify for the stimulus. That way, she can brag / complain about it to her friends. And I've got $1,400 for the craps table, so win-win.
Oh.
Hey, new wager. Caitlin and Zach are together, but they're on the rocks in 1 year or two. Let's see how good that one is.
Let's be honest. If your relationship's on the rocks over $1,400, it's probably not that strong.
Yeah, it's probably that little guy right there that'll cause more trouble. Anyway, that by the way, Huck on the podcast tonight, making an appearance. It's good to see.
Here's Huck's College Fund.
Yep, here we go. Roll me a 7, Huck's College Fund. Anyway.
Scholarship.
He's going to learn to be. He's going to be a punter. I'm going to teach him how to punt. He's going to college.
Learn to throw a baseball.
I don't think there's a lot of 5'9", 250-pound punters because that's where we're projecting right now. He's got left guard written all over him.
Division III left guard.
The early call on young Huck, who is 9 months. How young is Huck still?
Huck is 8 months.
Huck is 8. 8 months, and we're already projecting left guard.
He weighs the same as his brother, who is 20 months.
Jesus.
It could be that he just enjoys the bottle a little more than young Gehrig.
Well, part of it is he's just now starting to crawl, So, once you start to crawl, he'll burn off some of that baby weight, I'm hoping.
Yeah. You'll see him outside this summer working the tackling dummies, and then we'll start to figure out where he's at with his agility and his shuttle time. That'll be the big key. That'll come up. And
that baby's chopping his feet like crazy.
That's good. Anyway, all right, so that's a bet. That's a bet on Desean Watson. It does feel like if Deshaun's going to move, Carolina feels like the team he would move to. Like, I just don't see the Jet situation being an improvement. I don't think the Miami thing feels realistic. I always just feel like it has to be Carolina if it's going to be anybody on Desean Watson. And if that does happen, yeah, it certainly helps Carolina. Clearly they're all in. They're going to be the talk of the town for a couple of weeks. I just don't know if that manifests into wins for the reasons that I think you've pointed out, Ryan, that I think they clearly need more than just him. But I also think Desean needs more than just him, too, because he's not good enough to elevate guys around him to that level, I don't think.
Right, and I think that part of that's a systemic issue in Houston. I don't think that they were running something that really played to all of his strengths quite as much, and they certainly didn't, after Hopkins left, they certainly didn't have the weapons around him to get that done. I think that the Jets move is interesting, but the question that I asked people who say that that's the one that's going to happen is, why would you trade away the second pick when you can take a guy who you can have on a rookie deal and have more picks around him?
Yeah, they're not trading for Desean Watson. That's not happening.
No, it makes no logical sense to do that. I mean, sure, if you think that they're going to trade him because they're the Jets and that's a Jets move to make, sure, but again, you're mortgaging your future on a guy with nothing around him then. And I can't stress enough how much that's going to be the bigger indicator at this point. That teams want to see the teams that need to rebuild are the teams that are getting projected for Desean Watson, and it makes no sense.
I wonder how much Rule is banking on just needing a quarterback to keep a job.
Yeah.
Yeah, he is the unproven college guy, right? I mean, he's the cat's ass out of Baylor. I think he thought he was going to roll in here and just, and just pound on teams and be this big superstar. And, but again, teams adjusted to him early. Quarterbacks got hurt, and that team got worse as the season went along. That team got projectively worse after about week 6, week 7. When they showed up for that Green Bay game, they stunk. I mean, that was not a good football team when they played Green Bay on that Saturday night.
No, and I mean, they were missing some guys, and it was,
yeah,
not a great weather night in Green Bay, but that game was over before it started.
It was not great. So Carolina's going to be the team. I think they're the interesting team to watch. Obviously, everybody's going to watch New Orleans to see about the cap thing and see about Brees. I think everybody's fascinated with Tom Brady and the Bucs because it looks like they want to reload and run it back. But Carolina, if they make that splash, is going to be somebody that's kind of interesting to watch, right? All right, so let's go to Atlanta. They hire a new coach, Arthur Smith. I got to tell you, I didn't love this hire. I know that they're raving about him in Atlanta, but I didn't love this hire at all. And they have yet to really kind of put their flag in the ground and figure out where they're going to go. They're in this weird place where they've got some aging guys and they've got some young guys, but they didn't win anything last year. And they're at that weird crossroads too, right, Ryan? I mean, so what is, if you're Arthur Smith, if you're Arthur Blank, if you're the Atlanta Falcons, I mean, where do you start?
Look, I think that first and foremost, you need to make a decision if you're going to start looking for the heir apparent to Matt Ryan. And if that's your decision, it needs to happen right now because you're not going to have a draft pick much higher than this from now on. That's a very, very talented team. I thought last year that they were the talent-wise, I thought that they were the best team in the NFC South. That didn't pan out, obviously, but on paper, they're a really good team.
I know you said earlier you weren't drinking. Have you started?
I said last year. I'm telling you, last year, this is what I thought. I think they're a very talented team. They've got some defensive holes that they have to fill. Offensively, I think that they can compete with anybody in the league.
They scored points last year. They scored a lot of points last year. They did. Like Calvin Ridley had a big year. Like they had huge numbers. They lost every game that they lost so many games in the last 2 minutes.
Right. And I think part of that, obviously, it's on coaching. That's why they got a new coach this year. I don't love the hire, but that's part of the reason, right? The other part of the reason, like I said, is defensive holes. They have a ton of holes on defense. They functionally don't have a pass rush. They've got basically nobody on the outside. Their linebacker core is mediocre at best. There are so many holes defensively that you have to fill. The good news is that in this draft, there's a lot of places that you can fill those holes. So the question then becomes, do you work on the defense, trade back from pick 4 to a team that you know is going to want to trade up? A team like Denver is going to throw a lot of picks at it if they want to upgrade at quarterback. A team like Detroit could throw a lot of picks at it and move up if they want to get ahead of the curve on the weapons that are going to get drafted at that point in the draft. There's a lot of options here. Philadelphia wants to move up from 6 to 4 to pick up Jamar Chase or Jalen Waddle or Kyle Pitts. Those are going to be trades that can happen in the top 10. With that said, if you move out of 4, you might not be able to get the quarterback that you want to take over for Matt Ryan in a year, 2, 3, when Matt Ryan inevitably decides it's time to hang up the cleats. So, like I said before, the biggest question that you have to ask is, are we going to go in on a quarterback early in the draft this year because this is going to be the highest draft pick you're going to have? Or do we trade back and fill the holes on defense and just trust the system with Matt Ryan that there's going to be another quarterback that you can pick up later on after he retires?
Yeah, I don't love any of the quarterbacks right now. Aside from Lawrence at the top.
Yeah.
So I would.
This feels like 2011 to me.
I would be inclined to move back and take what I could fill other places, and then address quarterback in a year. And I think that in general, if I'm building a team, and I mean, obviously they have a quarterback right now. He's not. You guys like him more than I do, but if I'm a guy who's going to build a team, I would build all the other stuff first,
right,
and then follow it up with the quarterback.
Yeah, I honestly, I would trade back with one of those teams that's willing to pay a king's ransom to go get their quarterback, because you're going to have teams that are jumping at it this year, right? Guys that I really think that in my honest to God, I think that picks 3 and 4, Miami and Atlanta, could both get moved because they both have quarterbacks, and they're going to be there's going to be a ton of offers thrown around between those two teams. That Miami's already got a ton of picks in this draft. They could pick up more picks in this draft. Atlanta needs to fill a bunch of holes. They could fill up a bunch of holes just by trading back a few picks.
This may be a dumb question, but like, how serious is Miami about trading quarterbacks here?
I don't think we'll ever know unless they do it.
You know, like Tua, and if there is an offer on the table of Tua and first round picks, like, why hasn't Houston done it yet?
Right.
You know, like this feels like, I know I mentioned this before, like we're getting kind of Minnesota-ish here, but it feels like the Johan Santana trade, where you keep sitting and waiting for someone to offer you everything in the world, and you're not going to get it, and the offers are just going to go down. So,
yeah, more and more teams are going to realize that Houston's over a barrel.
I'm scared of I'm scared of the Tua deal, because if a team is going to take a guy with that pick and invest that capital, I mean, they were in the tank for Tua campaign. Like, they got their guy. Like, it worked out, and they got the guy, and you're telling me 1 year into that, they're ready to move on from him? Well, that tells me that guy may not be good.
No, I think the difference is that Miami thinks, like, they're there. Right? Like, they don't want to wait until year 3, 4, and 5 of Tua, like, for him to hit his prime. They think they're there right now.
Yeah.
And if they plug Watson in, they're a Super Bowl contender. And
I think that's a mistake.
That may be. But
I'm not saying you're wrong. I just think it's a mistake.
Yeah, I think that's the vibe I get from this. If that offer is even out there, right? Like, we don't know if that offer's out there. And if I was Miami, I wouldn't do it. But again, like we said, like the market's been set so weird by that Stafford deal, and because they took Goff back, and like it felt like there was extra picks involved, and all those different things that I just don't know what the fair offer is that you can realistically get.
Right, and the Goff Stafford deal is weird because of the contract, and that's really what you were paying in picks for them to take on that huge cap number. But you don't have that with Tua. You've got a guy on a rookie contract that they have all of the incentive to keep.
Yep.
Right? Why get more expensive at the quarterback position when you've got guys around him and he could potentially take a huge step forward next year with a full offseason, another year away from the hip injury? He stayed healthy most of the year last year. Why not? Why would you move away from that? It doesn't make any sense to me. And the team hasn't confirmed it. There's been no credible sources that have really confirmed that they're even considering this. I don't trust it. I don't like it. I think that it's more likely that they could trade out of 3 or take a tackle, work on protecting Tua, maybe get him another weapon, upgrade offensively because that defense is really good. And if they're going to get better anywhere, it needs to be on the offensive side of the ball because that defense was so good, especially at the end of last year. So, no, I agree with you, Zach. I don't like that trade for Miami. I don't know why they would consider it. Why would you upgrade the pay scale for a quarterback who may only be marginally better than Tua at his best?
And this all comes back full circle because sort of Atlanta might be in a holding pattern here a little bit until they see what happens at 2 and 3, right? So, like, Atlanta could be in this weird spot of, like, do we trade back, or are we now a factor to move up, or what's going to happen? Is Miami serious about moving off the pick? Or, who's a dance partner here? And maybe Atlanta has to wait until draft night to make that decision. I guess I'm a little surprised that because, I don't think they want to wait Matt Ryan out. Like, I don't think they're interested in waiting 2 more years on Matt Ryan. I feel like, if you're going to bring him back this year, that's great, but you're bringing him back at a pretty high cap number. It feels a little stale. It feels like it kind of ran its course. It just feels like I don't know if you can just change the coach and not change much else, run it back and have optimism.
No, you're absolutely right on that. I think that the big key is going to be at pick 2. Whatever happens at pick 2 is going to decide what Atlanta does. Because that Miami's probably not drafting a quarterback. Right? They're not going to take a guy.
Yeah.
If New York, if the Jets decide to take Justin Fields, right? If they go Fields instead of Wilson then becomes the pick at 4. Because he's the next best quarterback. He's the guy that you can sit for a couple of years and let him learn from Matt Ryan. I think that Trey Lance is kind of the same way. That he's a guy you're going to want to sit for a couple of years. So if it comes down to those 2 guys, where you can run it out with Matt Ryan, you can still use your other draft picks to fill the rest of the holes in your team at corner, at edge rusher, at safety, at linebacker. Those positions can get filled later in the draft with guys that are pretty talented and in deep classes. But if Zach Wilson's there, I think they stand pat.
I'm just to counter what you're saying. I think that teams are less and less wanting to have their quarterback sit for a year or 2.
It does seem that way a little bit. Although it worked for Mahomes.
So much is made out of getting those 3 or 4 years of cheap contract that I just don't think that teams are. There's not a lot of teams that are willing to go, hey, sit for 2 years. And then be the guy.
Yeah.
No, I definitely think that's true. I totally think that's true. But if you've already got a guy who has proven that he can be serviceable, why risk that first year where a guy can sit and learn and then start him the next year? Because he doesn't have to start year 1. You still get 4 good years out of a first round quarterback after that first year when he can sit and learn. So I don't necessarily think that he sits for 3 or 4 years, but I definitely think that it's a situation where if it's going to be one of those situations where a guy sits, Atlanta feels like the team that's going to work for.
So, but here's my flip to that. If you think you're a Super Bowl contender, you probably aren't taking a quarterback at pick 4. And then if you don't think you're a Super Bowl contender, then why not run the young guy out there, get him the experience? And if you're not great or he has growing pains, oh well, then I'm picking high again.
Yeah. You're also not guaranteed a quarterback prospect in the next draft.
Better to go, 5-11 with a rookie quarterback than 7-9 with Matt Ryan.
No, you're right. In that case, I mean, you could see them taking a weapon. Kyle Pitts feels like he could fill the tight end spot there in Atlanta. They don't really have a tight end in Atlanta. They've got Austin Hooper, and I don't think he plays for them anymore. He plays for the Browns, I think. But they really haven't had a great tight end there in a long time. I mean, really since
Tony Gonzalez.
Tony Gonzalez, I think, was the last guy I can think of. Yeah.
It's interesting because and they can't go wide receiver. They can't take one of those hot shot receivers because they got Calvin Ridley, they got Julio Jones. They can't justify a third guy right there, right?
They run spread enough that they could, but Kyle Pitts is a guy who could play both. Where he can be your hand on the dirt tight end, or he could be your third receiver. He's definitely that kind of guy. I mean, Pro Football Focus said that if he's a receiver in this draft, he's a top 10 pick.
Interesting.
So, I mean, he's that kind of player. He feels like a fit at 4 if they stay there. There's a couple of people who believe that Kyle Pitts is the best player in this draft. I think that if they don't go quarterback and they stay at 4, Kyle Pitts feels like the pick to me. All
right, we'll keep an eye on Atlanta. Obviously, I think it all hinges again. I think as we talked about on picks 2 and 3, and it all hinges on what they want to do with Matt Ryan. We'll have to take a look at that. Last team in this division, we're going to talk about the defending, reigning Super Bowl champion Tampa Bay Buccaneers, led by Tom Brady. Tom F. Brady, as we like to call him here in the pod, or just Tom. I like to just call him Tom here.
As you like to call him.
As I like to call him Tom. Hey, I will say this, though, about Tampa. More than Tom and more than the weapons, first of all, it doesn't look like they want to lose anybody. They franchise tagged Chris Godwin. I think everybody thought Chris Godwin was going to be the guy, the odd man out, that he was going to end up somewhere else. And they put the tag on him, so he looks like he's going to stay. They look like they're content to run it back. And I will say, out of the 4 teams in this division, Ryan, Zach, they had the best draft, I thought, last year. They got contributors up and down from the draft last year. They nailed it. And that's the thing that nobody talks about, obviously. Everybody looks at Tom, looks at Gronk, looks at Antonio Brown, Mike Evans, all these other pieces, and Ndamukong Suh coming in free agency, who, by the way, didn't come in on big money. None of those guys came in on huge money contracts, but where they got it done was with Antoine Winfield, with Tyler Johnson, with Tristan Wirfs, and with all those guys that they got in the draft. So I feel like Tampa kind of nailed this, and it looks like they're going to run it back with a lot of the same guys. Am I right about this?
Yeah, well, here's the deal, right? I mean, you hit on it well. They drafted well. The other part of it, too, and I saw this online the other day, it's like, all these other quarterbacks are signing huge deals. Brady takes one slightly under market value and, is able to add more pieces to it. And then all the other quarterbacks are like, well, how does he keep winning Super Bowls? Yeah. It's like the best thing Tom did for his career was marry Giselle.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. Tom has not – it's not like Tom has been a pauper. Like, Tom's made money. He just hasn't had to make $500 million because every year of the last 20 years he's played has been guaranteed. So he's getting $15 to $20 million a season over 20 years, and you add that up, and all of a sudden Tom's made really good money. Is it? And
when your wife is making twice that, it doesn't hurt.
That's true. I can't argue with that. So, Ryan, they nailed the draft.
Yeah.
And what do you do when you're a team that's going to run it back with basically the same cast of characters?
You plan for the future.
So you
right?
draft a
make
QB
sure-
this draft, right? They have to take one QB in this draft, right?
Yeah, but it doesn't necessarily need to be in the first round, right? You don't, and you don't necessarily have to take a QB this draft, right?
Yeah,
you don't have to. I mean, I think that if you're looking at Tampa's situation, you could probably say that there's some holes that they probably want to fill along that defensive line, right? You look at the edge rusher situation in Tampa and think, yeah, they probably want a little more pressure on the passer. Obviously it didn't work quite so poorly in the Super Bowl. They got plenty of pressure, but that was against third stringers on the offensive line. Offensively, you probably want an upgraded guard. So your running game takes off a little bit. You might want to take a running back. If you're Tampa, a running back in this league is more of a luxury than anything right now. You're not really using them to run the ball quite as much as you are as a change of pace guy in a lot of situations, unless you're Tennessee. So I think there's a number of different places that you could go with this. You're picking 32nd, so it's basically a second-round pick. All of the really, really, really good guys are going to be gone well before Tampa gets a chance to draft. Honestly, I like the idea of them going running back here. I think that to me feels like the number one hole in their offense, and they don't have a whole lot of holes on the team. And if you're basically running back the same team next year, I mean, to me, it feels like that someone like Travis Etienne, someone like Najee Harris could be a really good pick here for Tampa.
I think this pick screams trade.
Yeah, I agree.
There's always so much value in that last pick because it's the extra guaranteed year, that was always on the contracts. And so I think that, in a year where you don't need anything and you're going to run it back, it's not a bad time to make the move, especially because, it doesn't allow everyone else to get ready and maneuver on day two, right? Like you get out in front of it and somebody's going to want the last pick so that they don't have to deal with everyone else the next day. So I think they'll trade it.
Plus, you have to trust your eyes, right? Your scout eyes, they were good last year, considering they didn't get a draft combine, really. They didn't get a lot of these pro days. They had to just sort of go off of film and go off of virtual interviews and go off of all of that stuff. And I thought they were finding depth in round 5, round 6 of this draft. So you almost trust your... I got to feel like you're going to have more options to look at this year, more pro day looks, more resources at your disposal. You just have to feel really confident that you're going to add 5-6 pieces on the back end of the draft that are just going to be better than everybody else.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that if you're Tampa, there's a limited amount of situations where you seriously consider staying at 32 for a player. But I think that those situations are so unlikely that I don't expect that to be the case. It's if someone like Kadarius Toney falls to them, right? The Florida wide receiver. I don't think it happens. I don't think that they have that. They really don't have a need at wide receiver. I mean, you've got 3, 4, 5 guys, but as Kansas City has shown, you never have too many weapons, right? So I think that that's a situation where I could see them sticking. But other than that, man, I really don't see them staying in that pick.
If NTN is there and he goes, that's a really interesting dynasty pick now in fantasy.
Yeah, I agree.
That's true. Hey, so Tampa wins this division next year, right? Like it feels like going in. Obviously, they're going to be the favorite, but obviously, if New Orleans takes the step back that we think, if Carolina doesn't make the marketed improvement, I mean, Tampa smells like another 11-win season, right? Another 11, 12-win season. Plus, they bring back their coaching staff. They didn't lose a coordinator. They didn't lose a quarterback's coach. They didn't lose a piece. Like, they bring literally whole coaching staff, whole roster for the most part back in its entirety.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, they're the favorites. They're minus 160 to win the South.
Oh man.
it depends on what happened, right? I mean, they do have some free agent stuff that they have to address, but I think it sounds like they're all going to run it back. I mean, the only other one that the Saints are plus 180 right now, and I feel like that number skyrockets when Drew retires officially.
Yeah, and I just don't think that they're going to have enough talent on that team to get them anywhere close to a division title. Honestly, I think that the one team that could challenge them for it is Atlanta. If Atlanta takes the step forward, if they fill those holes, they have the talent and the scoring ability to put some pressure on Tampa. Now, a lot of that remains to be seen. There's a ton of wild cards there, a huge amount of variables. If those steps get taken, Atlanta feels like a team that could win 10, 11 games.
Oof. Wow. Well, then I'd be totally wrong on Arthur Smith.
So I'll tell you this. Ryan, if you truly believe that,
here we go. I got to kick the bed out. Let me get the sheet out. Hang on. Here we go.
No. I'm telling you, Ryan. Like, you need to send some money with Tim to Vegas tomorrow because they are plus. They're 10-1.
Ooh.
So
I might do that.
A future for that.
I mean, yeah. If you really think that, I mean, that's a good value bet if you are in on them.
And it's right now you're betting on a lot of things coming together, right? You're betting on, can they draft a corner in the 4th or 5th round that can start for them, right? Are they going to sign a linebacker or a safety or an edge rusher that's going to make a difference on their team? That's what you're betting on at this point. Because offensively, they've really got it all together. Offensively, they can score with any team in the NFL. Defensively, they get boat raced.
Does this kick off our segment here? This is our last segment of the pod called Bold Predictions, or as we like to call it, the Bayless Predictions here at here in the NFC South. So let's kind of go around the horn here. Ryan, bold prediction in the NFC South. Give me just something out of the ordinary that will just happen that you think is out of the Skip Bayless type pick of this division. What do you got?
Look, I think that if we're going to talk about a Skip Bayless pick, we first got to address the fact that on his show today, he actually talked about how Ray Allen saved LeBron James' career. So if we're going to have a take that is that radioactive, I think that Tom Brady breaks his leg in week 2 and the Saints win the division with it's some backup quarterback, Fitzmagic or whoever, stepping into play. No, I don't think that's going to happen. I think, honestly, if you want my hottest take on this division, I think Atlanta wins the division next year.
Wow. Unbelievable. That's hot. Okay, all right.
Now you asked for a bold take, I gave you a bold take.
That's a bold take. Zach, do you have a bold take?
I don't know that I can go that bold because that is quite bold. I'm just going to go with it. Desean Watson will be the quarterback in Carolina at the start of the year.
That's pretty bold. Well, so that would be interesting. I'm going to go with this one. Drew Brees starts week 1 for the New Orleans Saints. Is that bold or is that not? Is that bold? I don't know if that's bold or not.
I think it's bold. At this point, I would say it is.
There's something smells in New Orleans. And it's not the gumbo, and it's not the dirty leftover Katrina water that's in the streets. It's something else there, and it feels like. There's no reason for Drew to be still in the league if he wants to retire. Phil Rivers already stepped out. They've already got the quarterback replaced. If you wanted out, he'd be out by now. I'm just starting to think he might be the guy week 1. Week 1, I feel like Drew Brees, book it. I think Drew Brees starts week 1 for the New Orleans Saints. All right, guys. Wow, that was intense. We just went for another hour and 20 talking the NFC South and Dak and everything else. I love these off-season pods. These off-season pods are great.
They're only going to get better.
Only going to get better.
As we wrap this up here, are you celebrating tonight, Tim, as the Timberwolves losing streak is over?
You know what? I celebrated a week ago when we finally achieved the title of worst franchise in the history of professional sports, as far as winning percentage goes, and that gave me a big source of pride to know that we were a part of something big.
Yeah, but we just won. How many more wins until we play? I mean, we just beat New Orleans by 30 on the road.
Yeah, we might need to calm down on the winning, though. Otherwise, we're going to give that back to Tampa Bay or give that back to some other franchise. We got to be careful here.
Right.
Yeah, that would be just like us. We finally achieved something where we're the worst at something. We're the best at being the worst. We're something that's great that we can talk about, and then we immediately give it back by going on like a 10-game winning streak. That would be very Timberwolves-like, wouldn't it? That would just beat all.
Edwards looked good tonight.
Edwards, I like. I kind of like Edwards.
We've got some nice little rookies in this town.
I like Beasley. Beasley is certainly. I mean, he certainly lacks no confidence as far as his taste in women and being able to go out in public with that. Going after Scotty's wife is. I could tip my cap to that a little bit. And Anthony Edwards, I kind of like him. I think he's all right. I still think you got to trade Karl Anthony Towns, or I just think you got to move him because I just don't think
we're just starting over again.
Well, I just don't know if here's my thing. You either got a guy or you don't in this league. It's really that simple. Like you either have an elite player or you don't have one, and I just don't think we have one. And so but we're paying him a supermax contract like he is one, and that is the challenge. But meanwhile, if you have a superstar if you can get a number one pick again, maybe the superstar's in the draft. Maybe you trade for another guy that's up and coming. Maybe Edwards is a superstar. I don't know, but I don't know. I don't know what to do in the NBA. The league is set up for teams like the Wolves to fail. If we're being honest, the way the league has their cap structure, the way that their max contract rules, all that stuff sets up the worst teams to fail. I mean, there's no way, because the Wolves can't offer something to, say, LeBron James, for example. LeBron would never play here, but let's just say that for example. The Wolves can't offer him anything more than what the Lakers can offer him. They just can't.
Right.
Like, if they could say, okay, our cap is $200 million. LeBron, we are literally going to pay you $100 million a season.
I agree. That's the fix I've been pushing for a long time. Hard cap at 200 or whatever it's going to be. You don't need to you can't go over it. And there is no max contract though.
Yep.
So if you want to pay someone, 75% of your cap, you can. And then that guy, it's a lot harder for that guy to leave $30 million on the table each year to go play with a super team.
To me, that's the way to do it. Like, you have to stare a James Harden in the face and say, I know you can go play with Kevin Durant for $14 million or $20 million, but you can come here for $50. Like, don't you want to be here for, I'll pay you 3 years for $150. Like, I mean, or whatever it takes. I don't care. $210. I'll give you 3 for $210 to come play here. And then you got a real bidding war. Now you got something. If you're the Wolves, you got a little leverage then. Now you got something to offer that other teams can't get to. Because if you're a team like the Lakers, you're like, can't get there. I got LeBron, I got AD, I got all these other guys. Can't get there.
But that's not what the NBA wants either.
No, it's not what they want. That's what I said. They don't want that.
They don't want parity and balance. They want super teams.
Clearly. And that means teams like us are just going to lose for a long time. So, unless you hit the lottery. Unless you hit really lucky and you get a superstar. You get Giannis Antetokounmpo who wants to stay there. I mean, good luck. Hope you get it. Well, thanks for NBA talk. That we just began to flex the hoopology of the NBA tonight. Also, I know Ryan's pumped up as we get into our sports wrap. NHL back to ESPN for 7 years, starting next year. Been waiting. That's been about 15 years in the making. 20 years. I feel like it's. Yeah, you're right. It needed to. They lost their visibility. They lost a big part of their brand when they left. They need to get back on there, and that'll be a big boost.
Just for a couple $1 million.
Yeah, just for a few extra cash, a few extra bucks. They went to Versus, they went to Fox, they went to everywhere under the sun, got nothing, and got nothing for it. So
look, it's going to be. I don't want to get into hockey talk. I know you're trying to wrap, but look, this is going to be huge for the sport. It's going to be huge for the NHL. I'm really excited to see what it does. And if just for a mention real quick, if you're a hockey fan and you're not paying attention to what the Minnesota Wild are doing right now,
I don't have Fox Sports North, so I can't.
This is, and I'm not really a Wild fan. It's the best Wild team I've ever seen.
Boy, that's
but
they finally have that guy. They're the fastest skating team I've ever seen them play with. They have guys that can score on every single line, and they've got a young goalie who is quickly becoming one of the best young players in the NHL. He's won 7 in a row, and he just had his first shutout. They're legitimate. It's legitimately the best projection you've had for the Wild over the next 5-6 years that I've seen for a team.
We've covered, football, basketball, hockey. Now, do we want to talk like cricket or anything else tonight before we wrap this?
Any baseball talk you want to get in, Zach? Anything you want to preview for your baseball pod, Tim?
Great. The baseball pod is coming. I will say that. Maybe when we get back from Vegas, Zach and I are going to have to sit down and preview the upcoming baseball season, go through winners and losers in the division. That is coming. Cricket talk, I think we're still a few weeks out on that. I do want to thank folks for listening to the golf pod, though. Our golf pod numbers have been really nice. I really want to thank folks for that. I want to continue to thank people for listening to Peak Cinema and supporting Lauren and supporting Ryan on that particular endeavor. It's been really fun doing all these pods. And, of course, I love our football pod with my guy Zach and Ryan. We got to get Derek back. We've been pitching some wrestling stuff in the wrestling talk. Boy, Top Rope Radio's got to get back on the air quickly. We got a lot of things probably to get to there, too, as well. So much happening. It's been great. I love listening to everybody, and I love the fact that you're listening to the show. So thank you again for that. Again, find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Share it out. Tell everybody about it. Send me an email, timpodcast1@yahoo.com, and facebook.com/timpodcast. You can find us at all of those places. So until then, we'll be back again soon. We'll talk football when I get back from Vegas. It'll be great. For Zach, for Ryan, I'm Tim, saying keep your head up. We'll see you next time.